Welcome to Take Me With You, Episode 5. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen. Instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
Today we're talking to Tom. So last week we talked to Tom's wife, Serena. So you can check out episode 4 to hear her interview. Tom just started traveling internationally in 2017. And so international travel's a lot newer for you, Tom. So this is going to be so fun to talk to you about your experiences so far. So thanks for coming on our show.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So is that when you got your passport then?
No, actually, so I got my passport about a year before because when Serena and I got married, we actually took our honeymoon in Mexico.
Okay.
So that was I've been out of country in Canada and then Mexico, but never outside of North America until 2017.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Had you done much traveling, like within the states or anything, or just kind of had stayed local mainly?
Mostly local, West Coast. I did live in Arizona for about 6 years.
Okay.
I have a really good friend that lives in Hawaii, so I've traveled to Maui about 6 times.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Very cool. Wow.
See, and you're up on me. I've never been to Hawaii. All right, so Tom, a couple of questions that we like to ask all of our guests. First of all, why do you travel?
You know, it's, I think it's just fun to get out of your comfort zone, out of the normal everyday kind of things that you're doing in your city. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Seattle, and I moved, I was born and raised in this area and then lived away and then moved back, and I love it here, but I just love going out and seeing the world and different cultures and how people interact and how things are different. And I've always been interested in just the history of the world. So especially going to Europe, where, you walk into a building that's much older than this country is just amazing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know that you're relatively new to big international traveling, but how would you describe the type of traveler that you are?
Well, I definitely like seeing culture and landmarks, that type of thing. I'm not really the biggest museum person in the world, but I definitely like to go and see the culture and experience the food is a big one for me. I like being adventurous with trying the different cuisines of whatever region I happen to be traveling to. That's really a lot of fun for me.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah. And as a new traveler, what is a travel tip that you would want to share with our listeners? So I feel like for someone like me, I've been traveling for quite a while. So sometimes I forget what it's like to be a new traveler. So I think that there's a lot of really valuable insight that you have to offer. So what would be a travel tip you might want to give?
I think one thing that's been really successful when I've been traveling with Serena that she taught me was we don't have to have a complete strict itinerary for the day, but especially when you're going to a large city like we were last in Paris. And so breaking down a city into chunks and saying, okay, I'm going to see the northeast part of the city today and kind of have just a general game plan and then also figure out how you're going to get there and that type of thing before you're in the moment, just for me makes it a lot less stressful trying to figure out how you're getting to wherever you're getting, and then you can just really experience where you are and really enjoy it as opposed to being stressed out trying to figure out, especially if you're in a brand new city, trying to figure out what you're going to do, how are you going to get there, how's the metro work. So kind of having a plan of action, and I think the other big thing is, especially if you're in a city with a very elaborate like metro system, take a picture of the metro map on your phone, and then that'll also that helps you really kind of plan out what you're gonna, how you're gonna get there. Instead of you're in the metro station and you've got people walking by and you're trying to figure it out on a wall or whatever, you can do that in your hotel room, either before you leave the hotel or even the night before, like, hey, tomorrow we're going to do this, and we can kind of already figure out, hey, we're going to take the green line to here and then have to transfer, blah, blah, that type of thing. So I thought that was really, really helpful, and just kind of cut down on the stress of trying to figure out where we were going, how we get there.
Yeah, no, those
really
are both
smart.
really good tips. The chunking, and then just take a picture of the map. That way you've always got it. Awesome.
Oh man, that's a great idea. Yeah. So, you're going to share with us a trip that you went on recently that your wife shared about on our last episode. So we are excited to hear about it from you. So tell us all about this trip that you went on.
Okay, so we went to Helsinki, Finland, and Tallinn, Estonia, and Paris, France. So we spent 3 nights in Helsinki, which, starting off in Helsinki, really just a fun city, definitely a different experience from my last Europe trip, which was, I felt like we went to a bunch of old cities, whereas Helsinki is a very new, modern city. So it does feel like, if you're going to the modern parts of downtown Seattle or another American city, although the culture's different, obviously people are walking around speaking Finnish, and overall, just the feel of it's different, but definitely a very modern city. Also, there was what I thought was really nice was there was Wi-Fi readily available in most parts of the city. So if you're like us, where you're not getting either a SIM card over there or want to pay for an international plan, there's a lot of parts of that city where you're going to have internet access, which again makes getting around or figure out what you're doing, looking for a restaurant, those types of things really simple.
Would you say that the internet access, are you saying just like as far as like at restaurants and at hotels, or was there citywide Wi-Fi also?
There was actually free Helsinki Wi-Fi
as
well. So in a lot of parts of the city, because it's such a technology-driven city, there's Wi-Fi in a lot of places just in the city, not even if you're sitting in a restaurant or a...
Wow, that's really easy then.
Yeah, it was really great. And for somebody that, again, relatively new to traveling in Europe, and being in Europe can be, especially if it's like, I go back to my first time of thinking about when I was in Europe, and it can be a little overwhelming, the amount of people sometimes in city centers and that kind of thing, whereas Helsinki seemed like it's still a large city, but it wasn't nearly as crowded. There was a lot of space to walk around. You didn't feel like, okay, people are kind of crowding my space, like sometimes you can feel in some other European cities if you're not used to it. And people are just really, really laid back and very, very nice. And
that's great.
Yeah. I really liked interacting with the people, and just everybody was really friendly and surprisingly, for somebody, again, going kind of back to cuisine and that type of thing, for somebody who usually likes a lot of spicy food, Nordic food is not spicy at all, but there's a lot of flavor to it, and just very interesting. And they're really heavy on, they incorporate like a lot of local berries and that type of thing. But even with a savory dish, it doesn't overpower the cuisine, which I really liked. So, and again, I really like going and visiting churches in a lot of these cities, and so when I think of Helsinki, I think of we went to the Russian Orthodox Cathedral, which was absolutely beautiful. When you walk up to it, it looks gigantic, but when you get inside, it's very pretty, and there's a lot of gold and that type of thing, but it actually isn't very large inside. Contrast to that, you go to the Lutheran Cathedral, which is very obviously very Protestant, so it's very plain inside, very beautiful, still kind of Gothic architecture. There was a lot of light, and it was white inside, and there was a lot of natural light coming in, and very beautiful, but not a lot of the elaborate. It's not like they spent a lot of money on. I almost hate to say that some of these Catholic cathedrals or Russian Orthodox cathedrals are showy, but that's almost how it kind of comes off is
ornate.
Very ornate.
Yeah.
Like you can tell that they spent a lot of money, whereas the Lutheran Cathedral was definitely, they just spent a lot of money on the architecture.
Oh, interesting.
Very
cool. So you're mentioning food. Was there any particular food that you were really excited to try? And if so, how did you know about it?
So I had, before we went on the trip, just looking at guidebooks, and then also just kind of doing some research online about what the cuisine's like. And actually, I also had a friend that spent like a night or two in Helsinki several years ago. And so I was really excited. I had never tried reindeer before. And so I wanted to go and I wanted to go try reindeer. So actually, the last night we were in town, we went to this beautiful restaurant that served very traditional Finnish cuisine. And so my main entree was reindeer with like a blueberry sauce, and it's like one of the best steaks that you could have. Like, it tasted like steak. It didn't
really.
It wasn't like
so it wasn't like super gamey.
No, not at all.
That's surprising.
Yeah, it wasn't like deer at all, like venison.
I would have totally thought it'd be like deer.
Yeah, and I thought so too. But I mean, even when they served it to you, they could have brought that out and told me it was steak, and I wouldn't have known the difference.
Interesting.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So what prompted you to want to go to Helsinki and to Tallinn?
Number one, I think it's just kind of fun to find. For this trip, we wanted to find locations that were kind of a combination of. We knew we wanted to go to Paris, which is obviously a major destination for very good reason. But we also thought it'd be fun to kind of go to a place where maybe not as many people travel to, and just looking, doing research on Helsinki and hearing about people that have gone and how much fun it was, because it wasn't, I mean, obviously you're going to have tourism anywhere, and you're going to have tourist groups everywhere. Yeah. But it's not as crowded, it's not as prevalent. And there's more of an opportunity to actually see local culture, which was really interesting to me.
Oh, that's very cool.
And then as far as Tallinn, I just thought, well, gosh, you can take a ferry right over the Baltic Sea into Tallinn. And I mean, why not? You know, and I mean, to take a ferry boat to another country. I mean, I've never done that before. And so that was an experience in itself too, because it wasn't like any ferry boat I've ever been on. The ferry was huge. The capacity was like 600 cars and like 2,000 people.
That's crazy.
Wow.
And it felt like you were on a cruise ship. I mean, I've never been on a cruise ship, but I mean, the stereotype that I think of, like a cruise ship where there's multiple levels and there's all these eatery places, and like we went into a certain part of the ship and they actually had a band playing, like there was a stage area and you could sit down, and I'm like, I'm on a ferry boat and I'm listening to a band as I travel across the Baltic Sea. This is pretty cool. So
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
One of the things that you mentioned was Helsinki, and then also Tallinn, I think, also being a little less touristy, definitely not one of the major destinations. And then from there, you went to Paris. So you started the trip in a less well-known touristy location and then ended in one of Europe's biggest destinations. Do you like that setup where you do the less well-known first and then the big, or do you think there would be advantages to switching it around and doing it the other way, or what are your thoughts on that?
I like the way we did it.
Yeah.
I think for a couple reasons. Again, Helsinki and Tallinn are both smaller cities, so the way we had planned our trip, which we had about 13 days to be over there, so the 3 days in Helsinki, although I could have spent another couple of days in Finland and gone to other cities, which I have interest in doing, but for how we planned it and the amount of days, I think we planned it perfectly. So having that and starting off with, okay, I'm only going to spend 3 days in this city and maybe a day in this other city, and then the end of the trip being the big part of it. So we spent like a week in Paris. I liked how that felt, because then when we got into Paris, it felt like we just had a bunch of time and it wasn't rushed. Whereas I think if we had left like Tallinn for the end, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in the city for one night and then I have to fly home. Wow.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
So when you were in Tallinn, you were just, Serena had mentioned to us in our last episode that you guys just stayed in Old Town. And I know you mentioned in Helsinki, there were other places in Finland you would have liked to have seen. Were there other places in Estonia that you would have liked to have gone to, since you're only there for about 24 hours?
I definitely would have liked to actually go to the modern part of Tallinn just to see what it was like and what the people were like. I mean, definitely in Old Town, they are catering to the cruise ships, and they are catering to the fact that it's the oldest part of town. So you will get a little bit of the cheesy tourist, like people in traditional dress and that kind of thing.
Sure.
The theme restaurants and that kind of thing. Whereas it would have been nice to maybe go into Tallinn and see, okay, the people that actually live here, this is how they live.
Yeah.
What kind of restaurants do they go to? What's the nightlife like? What do they do for fun and experience those kind of things? And then absolutely go to, maybe the middle of the country and see how those people live. I mean, obviously when it's a big city, you're not necessarily experiencing everything in the country may have to offer or what it's like. So that's always interesting, but most of us unfortunately have limited budgets and limited time off, so we don't.
Yes.
A lot of times we just hit the major cities. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then you went from there to Paris.
Yes.
And I have to ask, again, Serena had mentioned that there was a group of like 40 or 50 high school students traveling on the plane with you? How was that during the plane flight?
Well, luckily for us, the how do I put this nicely? They were a bit obnoxious in the airport, and we, the dreaded feeling was, oh my gosh, I'm going to be stuck either in front of or behind of or in the middle of them.
Yep.
During our 3-hour flight. And luckily, the majority of the group of them were actually in the back of the plane, and we were near the front of the plane. So
okay, good.
the few high schoolers that were somehow got removed from the majority of the rest of the group were actually very, very nice, calm, and quiet. So luckily we didn't have to deal with that on the flight. But
Oh, man.
Oh, okay, that's good.
How long of a flight is that?
Actually, yeah, it's about 2.5 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not too bad. That's a nice
No.
length of flight
No,
right
not
there.
at all.
Yeah. Very cool. So what'd you think about Paris?
Oh, I loved it.
What did you like about it?
Oh gosh. Even if you're not like looking at sights, I could have just walked through the streets for hours at a time. Just the architecture, and and they speak such a beautiful language there. It's just even if you don't know what the heck they're talking about, it's so fascinating to listen to, and it really is. It's such a cliche, the whole, city of romance and that type of thing, but it really is just a beautiful romantic city, and just, the different sights and everything. Before I even get into like these beautiful old cathedrals and all the rest of that we went to, like I said, just strolling the city and being able to walk along the riverfronts, and for how huge the city is, and quick segue, but when I was very young, my neighbor actually went to Paris, and one of the things she told me was, I asked her about it, and I must have been like 8 years old or something like that, and so I asked her about the city, and she loved the city, but she said it was very dirty, whereas that was not my experience at all. So they've, as huge of a city it is, they've done a really good job of keeping it relatively clean. So it's clean, but yet it's old, and it has all this history and just the architecture. You just even look at buildings with little apartment buildings that have like the little lanais on them, and just even the it's not lattice work, but basically the what they do with the ironwork on the on the little decks and stuff like that. It's completely different than anything that we see over here.
Yeah. I've heard, what was it? Someone had told me once that they thought that Venice was really dirty. And I wonder if, and maybe when they went, it really was, but kind of like what you're saying, I think it's just older than anything we have here. And so I don't know that it's dirty so much as it's just aged. So I think because I would agree, Paris definitely, there's a lot of history there.
Yes.
Well, it also just makes me wonder if different people have different standards of like how comfortable they are in any city, because I think any city there's going to be some like level where someone could call it dirty,
True.
So then it's like,
that's true.
It also might just be like a personal preference thing, and so that's possible as well.
Well, and this was a conversation that happened in the 80s, so there's been a lot of time in between.
A lot could have changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you are not a 9-year-old then? Okay, got it. Just to clarify.
Right.
There.
So I'm curious, Tom, you had 6 days in Paris, which sounds like a long time. Do you feel like you got to see and or do all of the things that you had hoped you would while you were there?
Yes. Now, I definitely could have spent more time. So I didn't feel like, okay, I've seen everything, I'm ready to go, by any means. But I thought a week, at first when we talked about spending a week in a city, I thought, well, that might be a long time. And then I started researching and looking at all the things in Paris that there is to do and see. And I mean, I am not a museum person by any means, but we didn't even scratch this. I mean, we went to the Rodin Museum in the Orsay, which was quite honestly enough for me. I really enjoyed both of them. But if you're a museum person, I mean, you could have probably spent another week just going to the museums.
Sure.
I mean, there's people that spend probably 3 or 4 days just going to the Louvre.
Right.
So,
And it sounds like you didn't go to the Louvre.
we saw the building, but we did not go in the Louvre. No.
And that's totally cool. That was not a big thing on your list. Am I understanding that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay,
and
great.
and when we went to the grounds of the Louvre and saw the lines, the queue, if you will, to get in,
yes,
that just kind of concreted that we had made the right decision. So, just outside of Paris, it would have been nice to go to Versailles. So we did not make it to there. I kind of opted for wanting to take a quick day trip outside of Paris rather than going to Versailles. So we did that. We went to Chartres, which was beautiful. Cute little, quaint little French town. And again, they also have a Notre Dame there, Notre Dame de Chartres, which was amazing and beautiful and awesome stained glass. And as opposed to the Notre Dame in Paris, which is definitely very dark and you might almost say gloomy, this cathedral, just the colors inside and the stained glass windows and again the light coming in, you have all of that ornate nature of the European Catholic cathedral, but at the same time it was not gloomy in there at all. There was a lot of light and it was very bright in there, and it was quite beautiful. So and that's one of the main reasons why you would go to Chartres, and it was, in my opinion, was definitely worth the train ride to go there.
So is Notre Dame a common word for a church then?
It is.
Okay.
And we were actually curious about that. So after we went to both of these cathedrals and we were back in our hotel room and we looked it up, dork moment, we went on the internet and looked it up, and apparently in the Paris metropolitan area there are over I think it's like 50 or 60 churches that are Notre Dame of something. Oh, and it's Notre Dame
interesting. I had no idea.
Of certain neighborhoods, and then there's other ones all over France.
Okay.
So it's a very common name. I think as Americans and other people in the world, we think of the Paris Cathedral as the Notre Dame. Other than the college in the Midwest, but
there's
that.
So you saw a lot of churches on this trip then. So what was the favorite?
I would say the cathedral in Chartres was definitely, I think that was my number one.
Okay.
Sacré-Cœur was fantastic as well, and very beautiful. And then there was a church in Helsinki, the translation is the rock church, and what they did was they took this gigantic rock and they hollowed it out, and then they built a church around it. So actually a lot of the church walls are this natural rock, and then the ceiling was made out of, we found out later on, it was made out of 13 miles of spun copper. Was the ceiling of this
miles?
Church. Yeah.
What? Oh my goodness.
Wow. What does it mean for it to be spun copper?
Yeah, I am having a hard time visualizing that.
Yeah, so basically what they did was they made a circular roof out of copper. So they took copper wire and they just rolled it around in a circle.
Oh my goodness.
And
wow.
so it's this roof that's, the size of a major, probably the size, if you think of a ceiling in your house, maybe like half the ceiling of your entire house is this big round of copper that's been
oh my goodness.
Wound around in a circle.
That's so interesting. Was it bright in there then?
Yeah, it is, because underneath the copper, then it's all window until you get to the rock. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That sounds really unique. I haven't really heard of something like that before. That's really cool. Wow.
Yeah, very, very different. Obviously a little bit more modern. It was built, again, just like Helsinki is a very modern city. So I believe this church was built in the 60s and 70s. And you can kind of tell by, the way it's built that it kind of had that almost kind of an Art Deco look about it. Just the windows and how the structure is, that type of thing. But then you've got this, this rock just all around in this big circle. So yeah, it's really cool. And then you go outside of the church and you can kind of walk around and see you can actually walk up on the rocks. There's a pathway and you can kind of walk up by the roof of the church. So it's built on a hill, and
cool.
It's definitely very different than any church I've ever seen. So that was really cool.
That sounds like it. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's very neat. Okay. So you're into food.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what was the best food in Paris then?
Gosh, I'm trying to narrow it down, because
it's like I asked you to pick a favorite child or something like that.
Well, it's just, I would say the last meal that we had in Paris was fantastic. And for whatever reason, my mind, the restaurant itself was great. But I would say my favorite meal was it was the second night we were in Paris, because the first night we were so tired from just traveling, doing some sightseeing in Tallinn and then getting on the plane and that kind of thing. And so we were tired. So we just went to a little grocery store and got some food in our hotel room. But the second night, we went to this little restaurant where, funny enough, the power went out. Partly through the meal, so we got to have a romantic dinner in Paris by candlelight, because luckily the power went out. The power went out right after we got our main course, so it was going to be like a 4-course dinner. So we got our appetizer and we got the entree. And so we got to eat that by candlelight, and I'm totally going to botch the name of this because I'm not French, but it's beef bourguignon. And so it's like a traditional French beef stew. Okay. And it was just...
Oh, yum.
Yeah, it was just... just everything about it was just amazing. just the meat was great, and just the veggies and the sauce, and it was just, it was quite something. So
Nice.
yeah, that was my favorite. I would say that was probably my favorite. Obviously, it stuck with me. I remembered it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all the food there was great, but the one thing I will say about Paris is, if you go to a lot of bistros, which are very convenient there, but they serve you frites all the time, and so sometimes it gets a little bit much. So when you get to
for people who may not know, frites are
French fries.
Yeah.
But obviously they don't call them French fries in France. But yeah, so you'll get a salad with frites. You'll get a meat option, whether it be duck or steak or chicken or whatever, and they'll serve it with frites.
All right.
And it's good, but it's like, by the fourth or fifth day, you're like, okay, enough with the potatoes already, which I can't believe I'm actually saying, because I love potatoes. But yeah, it'd be, so going to now if you go to an actual kind of fancier restaurant where you're going to spend a little bit more money, then obviously you'll have some more options, as opposed to just getting fries with your, whatever your main course is. So
with everything.
Yeah.
So out of these different places that you visited, who were your favorite people to interact with, and like how would you contrast the different places that you went with as far as like the people are concerned?
Yeah, I'd say again, I'd say Helsinki was my favorite. And it's hard to describe it, but it's just, I just felt so welcomed there, and not that I didn't feel welcomed in Estonia or Paris for that matter. I would say that some of the American stereotype that the French are snooty, I didn't experience that at all.
Yeah, I never have either. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was one interaction that I had in Paris where I got made fun of because I didn't understand French, but it was in good fun. Like, we all laughed about it because this guy was rattling something off to me in French, and I'm like, I just kind of froze, and then I looked at him and I'm like, I don't understand you. And the next guy that was at the I was getting a glass of wine, and the other bartender that was there kind of laughed, and he's like, I don't understand, like he mocked me, but then we all laughed about it. Like, he wasn't being a jerk. Like, he just thought the whole interaction was funny, and we had a good laugh about it. But yeah, I never once felt, looked down upon for being an American or judged or anything like that. Now, obviously, when you're dealing with people in the service industry, there is a level of, there's a level of customer service, I guess you would call, that they're probably expected to have. But even with that, you can kind of get undertones if somebody is judging you or something like that. And I never felt that way at all in Paris. But to get back to Helsinki, I felt like I don't know how else to describe it. I felt so welcomed, and I even had a couple of interactions even at our hotel. Funny enough, one of the big things in Helsinki to do is they're really big on saunas. And so we actually had a sauna in our hotel room. So I went up and in the morning, Serena didn't have any interest in doing the sauna, but I was like, I enjoy it. Like, at the gym that I go to, they have a sauna, and like after I work out, it's very relaxing. And it's kind of you get in the really warm sauna, and then you take like a lukewarm shower type of thing, and it's very refreshing. And so I thought, oh, good kickoff to the morning before we go get breakfast. And so I went up, and this guy sits down in the sauna, and he started speaking to me in Finnish, and I looked at him and I said, I don't understand you. And he's like, oh, you speak English? And I said, yeah. And we just had this great conversation, and he was so curious why, like, he really wanted to get to know, like, what brought you to Finland, and we're so glad to have, like, he actually said, we're so glad that Americans come here and travel and see our great country, and it's awesome that you're here. Like, it wasn't just like, and this wasn't somebody in the service industry that was made to say these things. Like, he was just a local that was like, hey, it's cool to see people from other countries come here, and we love it, and we love interacting with people, and I don't know, they're just generally really nice people.
That's so
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
That's very neat.
So if you only had the opportunity to go back to one of those 3 cities, would you pick Helsinki?
Funny enough, no, I would go back to Paris. Absolutely.
All right.
In a heartbeat. Yeah. I would say so far of the places I've traveled internationally, and my previous trip, I went to some fantastic cities, but I loved Paris, and I would go back there in a heartbeat.
I mean, sometimes there's a reason that things are popular, so...
Yeah.
Sometimes there are. I must have. Maybe I just need to go back, because I was not that impressed when I went to Paris.
Oh,
I mean, there
I
were some
love
cool
Paris.
things, but I did not fall in love with it the way that a lot of people do. So I guess that means I need to go back, right?
I guess so, yeah.
and Ryan, I hear you, because like when we talked about it, I mean, yeah, I've wanted to go visit it, but I was like, previously, like, I loved. I visited Lisbon, and I've visited Porto, and I've visited Madrid, and I loved Madrid.
Yeah.
And I thought, there's no way this is going to top Madrid. Like, Madrid was my favorite of my last trip that I went on. Nothing's going to top that. And I thought, Paris is going to be cool, but it's not going to be the same experience. And it wasn't the same experience, but it was.
Sure.
I just loved it. I loved the whole scene of it.
Okay, I need a little rabbit trail then. I'm going to be in Madrid really soon. So tell me, like, what did you like about Madrid?
Again, the walkability of the city, the common theme here, but going to see the churches, the food is amazing.
Yes.
And
You just made Cheryl's day.
and the tapas culture is just, it's so fun, to be able to just kind of bounce around. You go into this bar, and you pay like €1.50 to €2 for a little glass of vermouth, which for us in the States, it's not the same vermouth that you put in like in a martini. It is a drinking wine. So it is it's a sweeter vermouth than what we're used to, but it also is not sickeningly sweet.
All right.
So it tastes like a very good, like a combination between a rosé and a red wine.
Oh, okay.
And so you go in, you pay a couple euros for this little glass of vermouth, and they bring you a snack. And so it's like you do that, and then you can, you walk 20 feet down the road, there's another bar, you go in there, you can get another glass of vermouth or a small beer or something like that. Which, that's the other nice thing about this is, as opposed to if you were to do that in the States, all these drinks, I mean, you could only probably get a couple drinks before you get maybe a little out of control.
Yeah.
Whereas there, all of the drinks they're smaller, so they're made to, you're just having this small drink. You're not necessarily going out and getting drunk.
Makes sense.
And yeah, you go in there, and they not only give you a snack, but it's a crapshoot everywhere you go. So like, we went to one place, and they give us cheese and crackers. Another place gave us a plate of calamari. There's another place that we got a cocktail there, and they gave us a plate. They gave us a bowl full of gummy worms. So
Really?
it was just like, yeah.
That's so surprising.
Then there was another place that gave us like corn dogs. I mean, it's just like, and you never know what you're gonna get. So it's just, it's kind of a fun little game. And then you also kind of start to play the game where, okay, well, this restaurant has a certain type of vibe. So then you kind of guess, okay, what are they going to give us for our tapas? That type of thing. So yeah, it's just a lot of fun. It's just a fun city. And we went in the height of their football season. Of course, we call that soccer here. But,
oh boy.
And so the Real Madrid was, I think, in the FA Cup or something. Anyway, so I think it was like the first night we got there in the major square in the middle of Madrid, and all of a sudden we see all these people in the middle of a square. And of course, we've heard when we went there, we heard all these things about how Barcelona, the Catalan, was trying to separate from the rest of Spain. And so we thought, oh my gosh, have we just walked into a political demonstration? And then we see everybody jumping up and down, waving Spain flags, and they're doing like football chants. And I'm like, oh no, they're cheering the football team. This is all right. Like, they're all friendly. They're all happy. And and we went into some bars, and of course they, one of the matches was on, and I mean, just the liveliness of the people and how fun they were. And,
I've heard about Spaniards in their football. So
oh yeah, oh my gosh. But in a good way. Like, they're, nobody was like rowdy or out of control or anything like that. Like, it was all good spirits and fun, and so.
Very cool. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for those little thoughts. I appreciate that. But back to this trip that you were telling us about before, we have to ask, because of the name of our podcast, if you could take us with you to one thing that you did on this trip, what would it be and why?
Oh, funny enough, even though when the idea was presented to me, because I am not a big fan of being up high. I do have a little bit of fear of heights. Going to the Montparnasse skyscraper and being able to overlook Paris was absolutely amazing. It was such a fun experience just walking around and seeing the city from 750 feet up in the air. So there's this elevator that takes you up, and what's nice about it for somebody that's not a fan of heights is, of course, you're in a building. So as opposed to if you went up in the Eiffel Tower where you've got the windows and you can see the ground leaving, I don't want any part of that. I was good with looking at the Eiffel Tower. I didn't need to be inside of it. I was fine with that. But the skyscraper was great. It takes you up to the 56th floor, and then the building actually has 59 floors, and so you can climb after you get to the 56th floor, which is the main observation area, and so it's all enclosed, and you can walk around the entire floor and see basically like a 360 degree view of Paris, which is awesome. You can go up, you walk up 3 flights of stairs to the 59th floor, and you are on the roof of the building.
Really?
And so you're on the top of this building. It's open air. But what's really nice about it, again, for somebody that is not a fan of heights, it's completely enclosed in glass. And the area that you're in is about 15 feet away from the edge of the building. So there is no fear of, like, I'm going to fall off or there's any danger or whatever.
Nice. That's nice.
And so it's very comfortable for somebody like me. And being up there in the air, and it was like 80 degrees that day. It was a beautiful day. It was sunny, and it was just, that was fantastic. That was
Very cool.
such a great day. And that was actually the day we went to Chartres, and then came back on the train, and the train station was literally like right around the corner from this skyscraper.
Cool.
And Serena had mentioned it. And again, me being the chicken of heights that I am, I was not a big fan of the idea, but I could tell she really wanted to go. And I said, you know what? I'm going to shut my mouth and I'm going to go and we're going to have fun. And you know what? We did. And I was so glad she convinced me to do it, because it was fantastic.
Wow.
That's good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So, Tom, what's your next trip?
I would love to go to Great Britain.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Why? Why do you want to go there?
Again, the history of it. I definitely want to go to London, but I also would love to go to Scotland. I have Scottish ancestry and Irish ancestry, so I would like to go to Ireland and Scotland. Just see the countryside. I would love to get up to Inverness. I had I think it would have been my great-great-grandfather was actually born in Inverness and was from a long line that lived in that town. So, I mean, I probably don't have any way of knowing exactly where they lived, but even just being able to walk around that city,
Very cool.
that would be a really cool thing for me. So
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. That's so exciting. Well, I hope you keep having fun traveling all over the place now that you have this
definitely.
new travel bug and your travel buddy and everything. Do you have any travel questions for us?
Oh my gosh. What was your very short, but what was your favorite city to travel to and why?
Oh gosh.
Like ever?
Oh.
That is so hard.
In the last 5 years. Let's make it easy. In the last 5 years.
Okay.
Okay, that helps a little bit. In the
That
last
does
5
help.
years.
That does help.
Okay, I think because you did limit it to the last 5 years, I think I can confidently say, oh gosh.
This is so hard.
Okay, I'm just gonna make up my own
You can't make
parameters.
up your own city. Oh, okay.
Yes, I could make up my own city. No,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make up my
No,
own
you can't do
parameters,
that.
and I'm gonna say, that my favorite city to visit people, because I have friends there, is Ljubljana in Slovenia. It's the capital city of Slovenia. So it's not so much like being a tourist there, as much as it is that there are people there that I know and that I enjoy spending time with. And obviously they live in Europe, so I don't get to see them very often. But then also the downtown area of Ljubljana feels very European, but it is not crowded like most other European cities. It's not a super big city, and so it has more of a small town feel while still also feeling like a big European city, if you can understand.
Yeah.
It's an odd balance, but the locals joke about, and I've even experienced that, like, it's very rare that you'll walk through downtown and not run into somebody else that you know. Even though you weren't expecting them to be there. And I've had that happen to me, and I don't even live there. So
Oh, wow.
it's kind of cool.
Oh man. I have a very hard time picking a favorite anything. So I'm not going to say that this is like 100% my favorite, because I just like a lot of the places that I've gone to a whole lot. But I loved Barcelona. Barcelona was so cool, and I'll be going back there soon, and I'm very excited. The architecture there is just amazing. And the food is very good, and it's just such an interesting place, and it's coastal, which is fun, and it's Spain, which is great. And so yeah, I feel bad for all of the other cities I've visited because I love them all.
And they're all now very offended, Cheryl.
I know,
because
they're not going to
cities
welcome me
have
back anymore.
feelings.
But Barcelona is definitely like up there. It's one of the top ones, yeah. So
Cool. That was a good question, Tom. Boy,
yeah.
making us think here. So with that, we're going to move on to our last segment of our episode, Wish You Were Here, where each of the three of us is going to share and highlight an attraction or a place that we've been that we think is really cool. And hey, Will, we were there. We're like, hey, I wish you were here. So Cheryl, why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay, great. So the one I'm going to talk about today is something inside of Disney's California Adventure. Apparently, I'm on my little Disney kick right now. I just shared about a Disney one in our last episode as well. But so this is just a fun little inside scoop for somebody who's visiting Disneyland or California Adventure. Is that there are some restaurants you can go to that if you eat like from this like prefix menu, then they'll give you this ticket to like a really good viewing spot for one of the like attractions that evening. And so I did it in California Adventure, and so there's like a couple of different restaurants you can choose from, and then you have to do this like menu that they have, and then you get to see the World of Color, which is their really cool like water and lights show, which is like so impressive. You can't even describe it. I mean, they're like doing projections on water, and it's like just amazing because Disney does everything full out. So it was fun. Normally when I'm in Disneyland or California Adventure, I'm not really like sitting down for a meal. I'm just kind of like eating food here and there. But it was a fun thing that I did with one of my good friends as like a birthday present for her. And so we went to Wine Country Trattoria, which is supposed to be like a Tuscan type of restaurant. And so it was like a very good meal. And then we got like front row tickets without waiting in line to the World of Color. And so I would say that that's like a fun dining package option if somebody wants to do like a sit-down meal while they're at Disney, and then also, you know, not have to wait in line for, and then they do the same thing in Disneyland, but with the fireworks show. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, Tom, what about you?
I would say, so in last October, we went to, one of the cities we went to was Lisbon, and I would highly recommend, I can't believe I'm doing this because I don't like tour groups, but there is a tourist group called We Hate Tourism, and they are based out of Lisbon, and they do tours in both Lisbon and in Porto, and another city in Portugal, of course. And I can't recommend them enough. It was such a fun. Number one, the group that we were with, there were 3 other couples, and that was it. So it was just
nice.
Yeah, so it was just like 8 of us on this tour group, and the guide, is from Lisbon, grew up in Lisbon, did not want to be, like a corporate tour guide. It'd be like a guy you would, just run into on the street or whatever, if and just, kind of let you know what his city was like. And, took us to some of the tourist attractions, but also took us to places we wouldn't have ever even thought to go in Lisbon. Like, there was a abandoned metro station that ended up getting by the local artists, ended up getting turned into this kind of street art, kind of cathedral kind of thing. So you go down in this you go down in this abandoned metro station and you see these people, doing art and that kind of thing. And he talked to us in depth about, he knows some of these kids that do this, and as opposed to these teenagers or whatever that maybe are down on their luck, they go and they get involved in doing art and that type of thing, as opposed to,
cool.
Being in a gang or doing destructive things. So, and that was just a little part of it, and just taking us into actual neighborhoods, and you could see how people lived and that kind of thing. And it was just, it was great, to, again, get to know the culture, and then also be with these other groups of people from around the world. So there was like a German couple and a Dutch couple and an English couple, and so just getting people's different perspectives of what they thought of Portugal, and then just kind of talking amongst ourselves too. We spent several hours with these people, so just having conversations with them, it was just such an awesome experience.
That's great.
Oh, that's awesome. So, Ryan, your turn. What do you want to share about this time?
Yeah, great. So I'm going to talk about LIGO in Eastern Washington, around Hanford, sort of the Tri-Cities area, for the people who are familiar with the eastern part of Washington State. So LIGO, as I'm sure everyone knows, stands for the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory.
Okay, because I thought you were just mispronouncing the word Lego.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, it's LIGO.
Sure. Okay.
And most people probably aren't going to know a whole lot about it, but it's actually really, really cool. I took my students there on a field trip last spring, and that was the first time I had been there. But as far as astronomy goes, it's actually really, really important, because it's the first place where they detected gravitational waves, which basically two black holes smash together and ripple space itself, and they can actually measure it there.
What?
Which is crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yeah. And it's a huge, huge deal in astronomy. I think it was 2015 when they made their first discovery. And so you can go and you can tour the lab, and they have a great kind of tour program where they tell you a lot of cool things, but it's not just like sitting and listening. They have a lot of interactive exhibits as well. And the exhibits allow you to like try things on and kind of play with things and see different parts of what they do and how they do this. And of course, the L is for laser. So they've got like cool laser things that are there. Ooh. And it's basically two L-shaped arms that are, I don't even remember, like a mile or two long each, that are perpendicular to each other. And so you can kind of go out and you can see the big long arms and where they go. And it's a really, really, really cool, I mean, it's small and it's out in the middle of nowhere, but that's kind of the point. But they just did such a great job. The kind of the guide person who talks you through the stuff, she does such a great job. And then they actually took us anyway for, I don't know if they do this for a regular tour or not, but they took us into the actual control room where the physicists were actually taking data like at the time, and we just could kind of walk in and see all the screens. And one of the things, because it's so sensitive, they have seismometers, just like you would detect earthquakes with, and because they have to filter out any vibrations that happen in the earth. And we were there, I think, 24 hours after the Hawaiian volcano started erupting and, spewing lava and stuff. And so up on the screen, we actually could see the vibrations from the Hawaiian volcano erupting. It was like you could see it up there on the screen. They had that from the seismometers. Yeah, that's how sensitive they are, which was just super cool. Anyway, as a science geek like me, it's super, super cool. Cheryl, you live way closer than I do. It's totally worth a day trip out there to go and check it out. It's really cool.
Cool. Yeah. That's awesome.
Wow. Thank you so much for being on our podcast, Tom.
Thank you.
Had great stories and tips and suggestions and
awesome.
no, I have all these other places I have to go. Darn it. But that's going to pretty much do it for this episode. Please remember that if you have any interest in following us on social media, you can do so at TimWy Podcast, TMWY Podcast for Take Me With You. We're on Instagram and Twitter, and we'll post pictures. If you're out there traveling somewhere and you see a place and you're like, hey, it would be great if we could be there too. You could take a picture and send us of your trips, and we'd love to see where you're at and what sorts of things you guys are doing too.
Yeah, you can also email us at timwypodcast@gmail.com and send us thoughts on the show and suggestions of things we should talk about or guests we should have on, or you can send us your travel stories as well.
But if email maybe isn't your thing, then you could try using a phone to give us a call and leave us a voicemail or send us a text message. And if you wanted to do that, you would send your message to 406-POD-TIMWY. That's 406-763-8699. And while you're out there phoning or emailing or twittering or whatever you happen to be doing, if you would also like to rate or review us and our podcast and this episode, that would also be much appreciated.
Yeah. Thank you so much to Beth Morrell for our awesome artwork. We love it so much.
Thanks,
and
Beth.
You can check her out at Beth Is Something.
All right. And with that, we're going to end our episode. But remember, until next time, take me with you.
Take me with you.